All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Convergence QOA and the start of the last day of the Ubuntu Online Summit. I hope you guys have all been enjoying the sessions that we've had so far. With me today, I've got Kevin Gunn and Pat McGowan, who are going to answer any questions that you have about what our plans are for Convergence, where we're at, and where we're heading. If you're watching this on summit.ubuntu.com, then right below the video, you'll see a little embedded chat window. If you log in there, it'll take you to the correct IRC channel for asking questions. If you have your own IRC client, you can just go to #ubuntu-us-convergence, and that'll take you in there. We'll be watching for questions there. The normal way we always do these, you start your question with the word question in all capital letters. That way I'll get a nice highlight and it won't be missed. All right, well, to start us out, I'll let each of these guys introduce themselves, starting with Kevin.
Okay, my name is Kevin Gunn. I'm the Engineering Director of Software over Unity 8 and the Mirror teams. And I don't know what else to say. I'll hand it over to Pat.
Yeah, hi, and I manage the teams that do the developer APIs and the apps development, and I also do a fair amount of project management for the phone delivery in general.
For those who don't know, I'm Michael Hall. I'm on the Ubuntu community team. We are the team that helps organize things like the Ubuntu Online Summit. All right, so again, ask all of your questions in the IRC below, and we'll get to them in the order they come in. Our first one is from Dragos, and it's very general, so maybe you can both talk to this a little bit, and it is, what is Convergence?
Right, I'll take a stab at it from my perspective. So when we say convergence, we mean really one code base to rule them all. So that is to have our software work, with runtime switching as much as possible on as many devices as possible, right? So that you have what most people would refer to as a mobile experience and a desktop experience, all being done and performed by the same code base. And of course, even though we say phone and desktop, that includes other things like set-top boxes and TVs and things like that. So you could still have those experiences delivered with that same base of software.
Pat, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I would just add that it's based on the context of what hardware you have there. So in the case of a phone or tablet morphing into a desktop, if you detect a mouse and keyboard and a monitor or something like that, then you can change based on that context and give a slightly different experience. The other thing I would highlight is that the design of the Unity shell, the UI itself, has been designed from the beginning with this thought in mind, where it's going to look very similar and behave similarly, even if you're on a small screen like a phone versus a desktop with multiple windows. You get the same general layout and usability is there, and that's been kind of designed in from the beginning.
Right. I remember back, I think it was in 10.04 planning UDS in Orlando. I remember Mark having a keynote where he put up a slide that had the Ubuntu logo on a desktop and then also on a TV and a phone, and that was big news then. That was the first time we said that we want to go after all of these devices. And I think people forget that all of the steps along the way that we've taken to get here, everything that we've been doing with Unity has been with that in mind. So we're not taking something that was designed just for desktop and trying to cram it into a phone. The UI paradigms that were created for that were designed to be able to go from one form factor to another with ease. And that's really starting to pay off now. I think anybody who's used the Ubuntu phone can see that, and it clicks now when you see it happening in action. I know when I've shown it off at conferences, as soon as people see that familiar launcher on the side and the indicators on the top, it's like a light bulb goes off. It suddenly all makes sense. All right, well, keep your questions coming in. We've got a couple more now, so I'm going to start on those. Super Potato asks, why does it take so long for QML apps to load on Ubuntu phone, even the core apps like the dialer? It's not really a convergence question, but Pat, I think you've got some, actually you both probably know some roadblock or some bottlenecks on that.
Yeah, I mean, so QML by its nature, has to be interpreted. Hello, Kevin.
Sorry.
So what we've done to help mitigate that some, that the first time an app is launched, we cache the results so that the second time, any subsequent time, it'll launch a little faster. We're working on some other optimizations so that we can preload some things in memory that are shared across multiple QML apps. That should help, but that's a very tricky thing to do in our security model. So it's taking us a while to maintain the app isolation stuff we have and improve the performance of app launching. So we recognize it's a bit of an issue, and we're still working on it, but we have done some things to optimize it so far.
Kevin, do you have anything to add on that?
Actually, I was kind of curious to ask Pat. Do we see, with our reference devices, some of those reference devices are kind of long in the tooth, right? A little bit older, maybe not as much oomph as some of the more recent hardware that we have. Are we seeing differences on some of the newer hardware where there's a little bit more oomph?
Yeah, I think, obviously hardware plays into it. So like the Nexus 4 is not necessarily going to launch as fast as the
Right.
and the more we also are managing with the app lifecycle, we're taking things in and out of memory. So depending on the memory pressure, it can change the behavior as well.
Yeah.
Because people need to understand that even though an app looks like it's running, sometimes we've shut it down in the background and then we restore its state. So that sometimes there can be a small delay there. But that's usually not as bad as an initial launch. But yeah, I think memory and CPU speed, it all plays into it.
All right. Dragos asks, is Ubuntu phone 1304 still usable? Did we have a 1304 phone image?
I don't think so. But it's been a while, so
yeah. Yeah, I think the first ones we had might have been 1310. So yeah, I would say no. That the current stable device images are all based on 1504 with an overlay PPA on top of those, and I think we're soon going to start providing Xenial images. Is that correct, Pat?
Yeah, we're working on Xenial images. I don't know when they'll first ship. Probably not for some time, but so we'll be on the 1504 base for a little while.
Okay, so we just skipped 1510 altogether as a base for the device images.
Yeah, we're going to skip 1510, and then we're going to move the Xenial when we can.
All right. Our good friend Stuart Language, Aquarius, is asking, there are a bunch of restrictions on phone apps which make quite a lot less sense on desktops. The obvious one is background processes, but also lack of access to files. Is there a plan to relax confinement on desktop class devices, or will my desktop computer be restricted like it's a battery-poor phone once we have one Ubuntu across all devices?
So at a minimum, we've already unhinged the lifecycle just for state of development when we go into windowed mode right now, so that things keep running. We're going to put back in place some lifecycle for apps that get completely occluded, right? And I'm mainly speaking from a rendering perspective, to stop apps from rendering. If you can't see them, there's no reason for them to spin or to render. So we do have that in the works, and that's active development work that's happening right now.
I do think, though, that the general model of being more restrictive on apps is going to be continued, so that more of the content sharing through the hub rather than free-for-all file system access. I do think we'll more or less maintain that, but we do acknowledge also that desktop users expect some file system access, so we're working through some designs on that now. Initially, though, it'll be fairly restricted and follow the confinement.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to view it, right? That we would start out with all the restrictions in place, and then slowly make arguments for why to relax and why, in specific instances, why to relax some of those.
Right. It's more about the use cases and how to support them. Yeah.
Right.
And for things like accessing files, I think most apps will do fine going through Content Hub to pick it, because it's not really all that different from going through a regular file chooser dialog.
Right. In fact, we've extended it so that it looks a lot like a file chooser.
Yeah. And speaking of battery poor, I can see App Lifecycle Management being really beneficial on a laptop when you're unplugged. Being able to have a bunch of things stop and not use up your battery would be a really nice thing to have. There's definitely a balance there, because you are probably going to want to have multiple things running at once. Right now I've got my browser and my IRC client running at the same time. I don't want either of them to stop. But for long flights, it would be nice knowing that a lot of stuff that I don't need running is not running. All right, Michael R. asks, a phone app has her name in the header. When running in desktop, it also has the name in the window title. Will that duplicate stay in the final Unity 8? I guess that's probably rather more toolkit level, so maybe Pat can answer that.
I guess I'm not sure. Well, Kevin might know better how we're doing with the window management.
Right. So window decorations is definitely an open topic with design, and we actually have ongoing discussions. We had some discussions this week. I'm actually at the mothership this week with the design team. So I know that the Unity guys spent a lot of quality time at the beginning of the week going over a variety of topics and things that we're actually trying to use our current Convergence platform, right? So we're experiencing it firsthand, and so we're logging a lot of those bugs for design to say, oh, we noticed this or we noticed that. Please give us some direction, some feedback, so we can get a uniform decision and move forward.
And just to let you know, there are, I think, 2 more design sessions today. There's one going on right now, a general roundtable, but we've also got a designer on in, I think, a couple of hours to talk about designing apps for Convergence. So that would be a good person to bring that question to. All right, Stuart again asks, is the capability for Convergence, driving an external screen, going to be a required capability for future phones released with partners? Or might there still be phones that can't do that, like the existing Ubuntu phones can't? So for reference, the current BQ and Meizu phones do not have the capability to plug in an external monitor.
Right.
Yeah,
and those are based off of the same software. I mean, so it really, there is no hard requirement for that to be there.
Are we going to provide some other method if the hardware itself can't support plugging in an external monitor?
Yeah, so
is still an option.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can still go into windowed mode even on your phone, right? You can do it. It's not very usable, right, because of the screen size. But yeah, there's no reason that you can't do that. I mean, on a tablet, it's kind of okay. Actually, you can, if you get one of those little keyboards with the slot in the back, it's almost usable. And then I was going to say, I think you, Michael, one of your statements led me to think about there was a bug that someone had logged yesterday about Wi-Fi display, and that's something that we're, looking at.
Right. Yeah, there's some more questions further down, I think, that follow on to this about Miracast and WiDi. And yeah, so we're looking at that support as well.
Okay. Awesome. I've got a Chromecast that would work perfect.
To be fair, though, there's a lot of work to do there to get it to work in our networking stack. So we're starting to look at it now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that as we've sat down and talked about it, it touches a lot of different teams and a lot of different groups. And as you can imagine, everybody's got their backlog of work, so trying to coordinate that and fit that all in properly is, one of the challenges.
This actually brings up a question I'd like to ask, and I'm not sure if it's any way related, but it sounds like it might be. We've had people who try and make videos of what's going on their phone or tablet by grabbing raw image frames from Mirror Screencast tool. Are there any plans to be able to use like the hardware encoder on a device to produce better quality videos?
I guess, yeah, the short answer is yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. B. Bronner asks, is Unity the only desktop environment that is being developed with convergence in mind? Will we see LXDE, XFCE, GNOME, etc. with convergence capabilities? So I'm not sure if either of you guys want to speak to that, but I will say that the KDE team is working on a version of their Plasma interface for phones, and we have a session scheduled for later today where one of the Plasma developers was going to talk about that, what's working, and where they're taking it. I don't think any of the others have plans at this point. I guess the best people to ask that question to would be the developers of those desktop environments.
Yeah.
All right, Super Potato. Will the next Ubuntu phones Will the next new Ubuntu phones will all be capable of convergence? And what will happen to the current BQ and Meizu sold? Will they be able to converge?
So I think Pat mentioned it, right? It's highly dependent on what's available in terms of either hardware or if by convergence you are actually hinting at external monitor, right? So, and then that means potential for some kind of a Miracast or Miracast-like solution down the road. There's no reason that we would never hold back anything from a device. We're not going to shave code out for any reason. So it will just ship, as part of the device. Now, whether or not it makes sense to use it with that device is kind of up to, the device and you, whether you want to.
Yeah, I kind of think the whole industry is probably moving in the direction of supporting external displays. I know now with Microsoft also targeting convergence experience that probably most OEMs are going to start, at least the higher end phones are going to be able to do that. It might take a while for all phones to gain that capability, although maybe with Wi-Fi display they don't need the hardware to do it.
I think that's really the key is, there'll be lots of phones without an MHL interface or something that we can do Miracast for all of them, then that's the key.
Right.
All right, I'm going to skip ZZ because he was asking about MX4 external display, and I think we've already covered that. Dragos asks, will you continue making the pre-installed phablet arm.zip Ubuntu phone? I'm not sure what that is. Pat, do you know what he's talking about there?
No, I'm not sure what the question is.
All right, Dragos, can you give us a little more information on that? We'll come back to it. Super Potato, what happened to the tablet mode? We haven't seen any news for a long time.
Right, and if by tablet mode you're referring to the side stage element that exists in the tablet use case, that is still there. I mean, if you were to put the latest Ubuntu on Nexus 7, you would see this with some applications. It does come up in side stage, and you can dismiss it. And we are actually doing some work there. We're taking another run at some polish, and design actually fed us some specification updates to try to improve the experience a little bit. So we are, there will be changes coming there soon.
How about multi-user mode? I know that was something that tablet got, or at least was showing the interface for.
Yeah, that is something we put a lot of effort into over the last few months, and that work, the fundamental work, the foundational work that we've done there is pretty well in place. We actually investigated potentially bringing that even to the desktop, right? Just taking all of our Unity 8 login and all the work that we've done in Unity 8 underneath it to support that. We've talked about delivering that as part of the desktop, and it's still kind of an open item, but yeah, that will eventually get there. It's some of that is driven by pull of the market, and to be really honest, there's not a lot of pull for multi-user session on a mobile device, but maybe that changes, especially with Convergence. Maybe we see that come through as a heavy pull requirement from OEMs.
I think that probably will come more from parents who don't want their kids messing with all of their data.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to skip a couple questions because we've already answered them. So I'm going to skip just Caracas's question about Wi-Fi display and Dragos's question about other desktops converging. And skip to Dragos again, who's asking what happened to Ubuntu for Android?
Yeah, Ubuntu for Android, we love that. We just didn't really get any commercial pickup for it, and I guess that's the simplest thing. Is we worked with a couple of vendors and just weren't able to get something to market, and then it was a fair amount of maintenance work, so we just moved on to bigger and better things. With full Ubuntu convergence, which is really where we wanted to be anyway.
Yeah, so I think the feedback I heard was that the idea of running a desktop from your phone was well received, but the idea of hacking that into Android was not. So I think we're on the right path now with Ubuntu for Ubuntu,
right?
And just doing straight convergence.
Yeah, I mean Ubuntu for Android was always kind of a detour to just show the concept. Really, it's unfortunate it never came out in a commercial product, but like I said, we're on to the real thing now.
I think we're also getting now to where the hardware is really just now becoming capable of giving a good desktop experience.
That's true too.
Yeah.
All right, Super Potato, what are the minimum hardware requirements for Ubuntu Personal? For example, what GPU and drivers?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, in terms of a good experience, I guess is what you might mean. I'll say this. I mean, we're testing with the Nexus 7 2013 model, and I mean it's really good.
Right.
I mean it's good enough.
Requirements, I'd say. It's
yeah. It's kind of incredible that I mean I could see it too. I mean you could very easily use it as a nice mainly content consumption device right now. Really browsing and listening to music and YouTube videos and that kind of thing, no problem.
I mean, the Nexus 4 is what, 5 years old now? 4 years old?
Yeah, and it looks pretty good too. It's not bad.
And it wasn't even top of the line when it came out. All right, A. Hazen asks, will my Unity 8 laptop desktop ever talk to my Unity 8 phone? So that when I get a notification on my phone, it appears on my laptop. Okay, the same as iOS OS X currently does. Is there any timeline for that? And I'll just throw in that KDE has something for this for at least Android phones also, called KDE Connect.
Yeah, I mean that's not a requirement that we have, but it's a great idea. I mean, I think that's maybe one for the the design team to add and product management to mull over.
Interestingly, we were talking about Ubuntu for Android, and we actually got that kind of capability for free when we implemented that, because we did the plumbing to talk between the phone and the desktop, and we had those notifications going in both being available on the desktop side. But yeah, it's a neat idea. I'd like to see it too.
So, Andrew, since you are a developer and familiar with a lot of our code bases, maybe you should look at what KDE Connect does at a protocol level and see what it would take to implement that on ours. All right, ZZR, will I be able to write SMS and make phone calls from a computer in the same LAN as the phone? Not quite sure what the use case is for that, but
Yeah, punt. Don't know. We don't have a requirement for that, so.
yeah. I'm pretty sure you could do it right now if you like SSH into your phone. I think you can do it from the command line if you want to be really overly nerdy about the way you get to it. But I don't think there's going to be any easy way to do it. Let's see. Geralt didn't actually start this with a question, but it's something I've seen a lot, and maybe Kevin can answer that. Do you guys ever look to Wayland to help solve mirror issues? So have we ever got stuck with knowing we need to implement a feature but not quite sure the best way to do it, and look to Wayland to see how they're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really point to a specific issue necessarily, but it's not something that we're opposed to, definitely, and I would think that they probably look at what we do too. So there's maybe I think there's cross-pollination that does happen. Just naturally.
I do know we've got at least one Mir developer who's always in the Wayland IRC channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen
that's maybe the good specific instance, right? Is libinput something that we both rely on, right? And one thing that we did was we pushed a whole bunch of the Android input stuff that we were relying on into libinput, so that we could just rely on one thing rather than two.
I think there's been some performance analysis too, where we benefited from seeing how they were doing it.
I think if nothing else, we do, use Wayland as kind of a benchmark for performance. We look at how well they're performing. I know we're watching how many how many buffers they use for a certain use case, and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that we're doing at least as well as they are. And I know that they're watching Mir in the same way.
Yeah.
All right, Sutter is asking again about the MX4 convergence. I'm not sure if you were here for the earlier part of this, but that was answered already. Long story short, hardware-wise, it's not going to support external monitors, but there are some options that we're looking into for doing it wirelessly. All right, Dragos is back about his pre-installed one. He's saying he's talking about the ARM HF pre-install for Phablet. I'm wondering if maybe he means the set of pre-installed apps that we choose for like the Nexus devices. So I'm going to assume that he's talking about the Nexus stuff, and just ask, are we going to continue providing Nexus device images, and for how long?
So we are for the foreseeable future, but I don't know how long we would commit to that, because every time we add another device with one of our partners, it gets a little bit harder to maintain some of the reference designs. Like, there's been questions this week about the Nexus 10, which is kind of, it's just not working properly today, and it's just due to lack of attention, really. So over time, we will have to dead end some of those, but there's no plans to stop in the next several months at least.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, I mean, the Nexus 4 is pushing 5 years old. It's getting harder to find. At some point, we're going to have to just move on from it.
Right. Or just, we may stop maintaining it and just make everything available. I mean, it's all there, so the community can certainly do it if there's interest.
Yeah, and we've already got community people maintaining a Nexus 5 port. We've got a guy named Marius who's working on a 1+1 port. So yeah, even if we stopped providing it, I'm sure somebody would pick it up. All right, Core Apps Police is asking about background apps on the desktop, which we did answer earlier. So if you missed that, please go back and rewatch the first part of the video. Michael R., is there a CPU arch preference for Convergence, ARM or x86?
Nope. There's no preference. It's the same on both.
How does, how about with the GPU drivers? I know we've got different manufacturers and chipsets for those.
Right, and that's the the magic of Mir right now is that we have really two platform approaches that are supported, one for the Android-based platforms and then Mesa-based platforms.
Yeah, I would say that right now the way the images are constructed, we're pretty dependent on the HAL layer from Android.
Yeah.
Right. So it's typically going to be an ARM platform for us, unless there's an Android kit for an x86 design.
I know there's Android x86 devices out there, tablets, and I think even a phone or two.
Right.
But I don't know what kind of drivers they use.
Yeah, I mean, then those will work if there's an Android kit.
All right, Just Caracas asks, why not allow multi-user mode on the phone that you can use, for example, to let your kids play on your phone?
Yeah, why not? I think it's a good idea. It's just not been one of the top priorities. It should come along.
So I'm sure that it introduces some interesting use cases we'd have to consider. Like, do you want your phones to be able to use the dialer? Or what do you do with an incoming call? Do you let your kids get a notification of an incoming call or text message or something?
Yeah.
All right. Geralt asked, do you guys work together with KDE Plasma Mobile developers? Also, doesn't Plasma Mobile run on top of Ubuntu Touch?
Yeah, I understand that it does.
I know at least the device image they provided, which I think was for the Nexus 5, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But it was based on Ubuntu Touch.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of the guys on my team are, they're tied in with the KDE guys. They're friends, industry friends, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
We all work with Qt, and we're all tied in with that toolkit. So.
All right. Dragos asks, if I connect an Ubuntu phone to a monitor, will Unity transform to desktop Unity? So
I believe, yes, at the moment it does, right? Which can kind of be irritating, so you want to make sure you connect your Bluetooth mouse first, or you'll have to unplug it again.
So last time I tried it, it wouldn't actually switch into desktop mode unless the mouse was connected. So if I plugged it into just the monitor, it would still be full screen everything.
Yeah, I think in the latest, though, that it does.
Okay.
And it's actually kind of an open topic. I have a bug right now open with the design team where we've discussed when is it appropriate, like what are the right triggers we should use. So it's kind of an open question. So that may change over time.
So one of the really neat things that we're doing that I just want to highlight is the fact that we're not just changing based on screen size. The easy way would be to just say, okay, small screens treat as a phone, medium screens treat as a tablet, big screens treat as a desktop. But we're actually looking beyond that to actual hardware capabilities and input capabilities, so that if you're running something on a small screen with a mouse, it might behave differently than a small screen without a mouse or a big screen with a mouse. So Convergence is more than just screen size. It's actually taking into consider the rest of the hardware that it's running on and what it can do. All right, our good friend Michael Zanetti is asking, speaking of integration between desktop and phone, will general sync, such as contacts, pictures, and maybe music or videos, show up on the roadmap?
I think the short answer is yes. Not sure time frame wise, but we're looking at different ways of doing doing broader sync and backup capabilities. I think it'll be fairly near term. We just moved
Great.
to the other sync framework based on Buteo. So we're using that for contacts now. We'll extend it to calendar events, and then I think we'll be able to handle a lot more backends with that because it's very pluggable.
Does that framework support like general file sync also?
I'm not sure, but I do know that it's pretty extensible.
Okay. Maybe we can talk to one of the backend providers like OwnCloud or Dropbox and see if they'd be interested in trying out a plugin for it. All right, those are all the questions that we have right now. We've got about 10 minutes or so left in this session, so if you have any more questions, please get them in now. Keep in mind that there's a couple minutes delay on the video, so if you wait until I'm saying that we're wrapping up the session to ask your question, chances are I've already ended it, so please don't wait, get them in now. Michael R. just asks about data sync. What is the status of U1DB? So for those who don't know, U1DB is a document-based database that we provide standard on the Ubuntu phones that provides device syncing automatically.
Stuart could probably answer this question.
I think Christian Dewin was working on this last.
We have an API in the SDK, but what we no longer have is the cloud service to back it up. So U1.
Well, we don't have the file sync, but I think it was using something different, wasn't it?
I don't know. I just know that we don't maintain the cloud service anymore. So while the database interface is there, there's no syncing to the cloud anymore.
Okay. Dragos is asking, can I still get Ubuntu for Android anywhere?
Not to my knowledge, no. Although I should say the code branches may be available somewhere. I don't know where they are offhand.
Yeah, if I remember right, though, they did require rolling a custom Android image, which may make it hard to make it work on other devices than the one that we were testing it on.
Right. There was usually some special stuff that had to be done with the graphics to do the dual display kind of thing. So you kind of had to work with the vendor to get it done properly.
Yeah, especially that was probably older Android wasn't quite ready for that.
You typically had to rebuild the kernels and enable certain capabilities.
Certainly not easy. Not go to download an APK and sideload it kind of thing. Let's see. ZZAR asks, how will legacy applications be implemented on phone?
So I guess when you say implemented, I guess you really mean supported. It is something that we're working on actively right now, the ability to run legacy apps. So you may recall, if you've been following along with us for a while in our development, the Mir team had a project at one point called XMir, where we talked about doing the system compositor and putting it in on the desktop to basically have Mir running underneath Unity 7 and X. So we've actually maintained that over time. And
yeah, I ran that for a little over a cycle, I think.
Yeah, right, and it worked and it was fine. So we're actually going to use that as part of our means to deliver support for legacy X apps in Unity 8. And then there's some other work that's going on by Stephen Webb and his team, where they're creating some basically container tools to keep those applications confined in the system, so that you'll have your old app and X running inside this container, but it can't get out and snoop anywhere else.
And Stephen Webb did run a session on that earlier in the week. So if you go to summit.ubuntu.com and look for, there's a search bar, if you search for the word legacy, that'll find you his session. And he talked a lot about the work that's going on and what we can expect to work and to not work in that. All right, Just Krakus asks, if I buy a Slim port now for my Nexus 4, will I be able to use it on the new Convergent device?
Yeah, answer is no, not necessarily. So it just depends on what the hardware maker chose in terms of their chipset configuration. So the Nexus 4 and the Nexus 7 do use Slim port, and that's kind of a trademarked item reference, right? That's a specific instance of a cable that you can use to hook up to HDMI. Whereas, there are other vendors that are looking at either mini HDMI or MHL as far as actual hardware connectors go. And when you say the new convergent device, I mean, it's hard to say specifically what that is, right? I mean, we plan to support and launch on many devices, right? And because of our philosophy, which is convergence just ships as part of everything, it's difficult for me to answer that question and say exactly what that means to you.
Although I think my Slim port adapter costs $15, so it's not.
It's a cheap investment, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the takeaway is that there are many different hardware and cable formats that can do this, and there's no guarantee what any new device is going to use.
Right.
I'm sure at some point everybody will standardize on one thing, but
yeah,
we're not there yet.
USB-C is another one that's going to come along too, right, eventually.
All right. Geralt is asking, is the goal of a default Unity 8 still set for 1610? And I'm assuming he means on the desktop.
Yes. One thing that we've done internally is we've, as far as our strategy and our roadmap goes, is we've somewhat tied that to our efforts in the Snappy world too. In other words, when we go to a full Unity 8 delivery on desktop, we want that to be all Snap based as well. So there's a little bit of trying to tie in those roadmaps together to make sure that they hit right. But yes, if everything holds, across the board, then yeah, 1610 would be when we would, drop Unity 7 and make the switch.
Dragos is asking you, do you know if there's an app for Ubuntu that lets you install Mac OS X apps on Ubuntu? I suppose similar to the way Wine lets you run Windows apps.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Curious if any of my guys are on the on the chat. Maybe they know.
All right. Core Apps asks, will we get an ISO for daily builds of Unity 8 like we have today for 1604 with Unity 7? So basically the desktop next ISO, are those coming back?
So the desktop next ISO is not. And I hope I'm answering your question right, but yeah, if you want to use Unity 8 on the desktop today, it's the desktop session mirror installation is really the answer for that right now, to where you can just log out and log in as when you go to the password prompt, you can click on the little Ubuntu icon after installing that, and you can drop down, and there's one with a little, looks like an 8-ball. You click that, you log in, and then you get Unity 8 as your session.
All right, Andrew Hazen, if I had a desktop-only application packaged as a Click or Snap, is there a way or a plan to allow me to only make that launchable when running in a converged or desktop view? Or must all apps submitted to the store scale from mobile through to TV?
Yeah, there is a way. Certainly, we'll filter apps in the store. Their visibility will be based on their capability, and we also do need to have a way to restrict them to only run in the proper environment. I'm kind of doing a bit of a hand wave because it's not all implemented yet. But it should be, I think the answer to his question is it should be possible to have a desktop-only app and restrict it to that use.
All right. Dragos asks how to install Ubuntu TV.
I think you need a time machine.
So the Ubuntu TV code is all up on Launchpad, but it's based off of a much older version of Unity and an older version of Ubuntu. So I think you would have a really hard time getting that working on top of anything more recent. All right, and we're running out of time, and we have one question left, so we'll call it a wrap after that. So ZZAR is asking, is there any focus on USB-C or Thunderbolt 3? Is that something that we need to focus on from a software side?
But in all these instances where we talk about these different connectors, I mean, that's really driven by the OEMs and the drivers that they're providing, and usually they're actually just taking a silicon vendor's driver and passing it on, right? And the way we've integrated this with Mirror is, to us it's almost drop-in so far on everything that we've seen. So there's no reason to expect that it would be any different. It's just another displacing to us as far as we're concerned.
All right, and we got one last question, and I'll go ahead and take it because it's interesting. Do you have plans to support OpenMobile ACL for Android apps on Ubuntu phone? There was recently news about this being used to run the Android version of WhatsApp on Firefox OS. Is that something that we're looking into or not?
We're not. I'm not aware that we're actively looking into it right now. We have analyzed approaches for supporting Android apps. There's a lot of trade-offs involved there, and so far we've chosen not to support them. If there was a lot of interest from one of our OEM partners, we would probably take a closer look at it. But so far, we want to have a really well-integrated experience, and the technical aspects of supporting the environment for an Android app is usually a bit too much. It doesn't lend to a good experience unless it's a fairly simple app.
Yeah, I think if you look at any platform that's tried to do this, all it does is ends up with a bunch of half-working Android apps that really give you a very second-class experience.
Exactly, and then it erodes it, making nice native apps that are, well integrated. So we'd rather have really nice Ubuntu apps. But yeah, I mean, we just want to get enough devices, enough phones out in the market so that WhatsApp is interested to supporting our platform. I mean, that's the answer.
If they were to make a Qt and QML app, it would look and work a lot better on Ubuntu than trying to run the Android one. All right, and with that, we are out of time. Thank you, Kevin and Pat, for coming on, and thank you, everyone on IRC, for all of your questions. And enjoy the rest of your last day of UOS. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.